Thank you, Ian. Somebody just commented to me, we have a good attendance today. It may well be because the talk is partly about drugs. It makes you wonder how many you've been into them. Anyway, let me introduce Cameron Addicott. Is a former undercover officer with HM Customs and a serious organised crime agency. He's had 20 years working as a criminal investigator, covert surveillance, operative commander, instalment handler and undercover officer. Got a wealth of experience. Ladies and gentlemen, Cameron Addicott.
Also frequenter of ladies' toilets. Survivor of the Black Death. Now I have a New Year's resolution. I know it's March, but I promised that I would take pictures of all my lovely audiences. Is your mic on? Can you actually hear me at the back? Who needs this one? Yeah. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4.
There we go.
Now you're all going to be bored to death. So, New Year's resolution. I've got one of these newfangled things where you scan the audience and it comes out with one picture. A bit like the old school days. So I don't want anybody from this side jumping up, running around the edge to try and get themselves on both sides of the photo. But we will see if it works. If we all say cheese in a minute. Cheese. It hasn't got a microphone, you can still talk. I'll show you later. Have you ever thought, as you are walking down the street, who's that guy walking past me? Who's the chap on the train, sat opposite, on the phone, telling everybody he's on the train? Who's the guy in the corner of the pub? Stubble, duffel bag, 2 mobile phones. Could be drug dealer. Could be an armed robber. Could be an undercover cop. Could be your husband, who you told specifically to see you in the Daffodil Cafe at midday, and he's in the Black Dog with a pint of Guinness. They say that you are never more than 6 feet away from a rat in the UK. It's probably a bit further than that for a serious organised criminal, but they are everywhere. Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Cameron. I spent 20 years as an undercover officer with Customs and the Serious Organised Crime Agency. What I would like to do in the next 3 or 4 hours is give you a detailed insight into the technical workings of what I used to do, or a slightly light-hearted view of what I got up to in the civil service. What we're going to do is look at the criminals, what motivates them, what sort of people they are. We'll look at the methods that I and my colleagues used to employ to try and catch them. We will look at cocaine, the production and the smuggling of. Once they've made their millions of pounds, we'll look at how they try and hide it, how they launder it. And at the end, I will give you a couple of personal thoughts about this war on drugs, which hopefully will elicit some questions. Please, nothing on maths or physics. I'm much more of an arty-farty sort of guy, not maths and chemistry. So these criminals, it doesn't matter whether they are the lowest level cannabis dealer in Shrewsbury or multi-million pound money launderer in Dubai. They have a couple of things in common. First of all, they are paranoid. Every time they step outside their front door, whether they are going to meet a Dutch flower lorry full of heroin or whether they're going to do the big shop at Asda, they are paranoid. They think that they're being followed around. But they don't necessarily know what they're looking for. I had a situation with one of my targets. I was tapping his phone, so I listened to all his conversations on all his mobile phones and his home phone and the phone boxes that he used. And he was telling his friend, he's driving along and he's saying, I am definitely being followed. And his friend says, well, how do you know that? Came out of my driveway, drive down the road, get to the corner, turn right, this black Range Rover pulls in behind me and it's still there. Every time I turn left, it turns left. Every time I look in my rearview mirror, it's behind me. Where are you now? I've gone all the way through town, up the high street, turned right, I'm heading out of town. His friend said, are you sure you're being followed? Yeah, well, where are you now? I'm just turning left into the McDonald's car park. And his friend said, that's me. We were going to meet, weren't we? Oh yeah. So they're paranoid, but they don't necessarily know what to look for. It's probably easier to ask who doesn't have a mobile phone. Two very sensible people, three very sensible people. And probably your children or grandchildren are saying, Grandad, Nana, you've got to get a mobile phone. Now, I've had the same mobile phone for years. I mean, the first one I had, when I was in a VAT office, my surveyor gave me a mobile phone. It actually took two of us to get it into the car. I mean, it was attached to the car battery kind of thing. So it was mobile in that it went with me in the car, but if I tried to get out of the car, well, there's no point. But I've had the same number for years and years. Probably like most of us, if we lose our phone, not only do we lose all the contact details that we have, people can't get hold of us. So we rarely change our phones. Criminals, though, they are paranoid. They think it probably takes the authorities 2 or 3 weeks, if they find my mobile number, and I'm sure they're listening in to me, if they find my mobile number, it probably takes them 3 weeks to get everything together, do all the paperwork, and get in front of the Home Secretary and get him to sign off on the interception warrant to start listening to my phone calls. So if it takes 3 weeks, what I'll do, I'll change my mobile phone every week. They'll never keep up. They'll never be able to listen to what I'm doing. Well, to a certain extent, the criminals are right. But of course, if that was true, we'd never catch any of them. And we can get these phones turned on in about 30 minutes. So if it's really important, we can start listening to these phone calls straight away. And they're paranoid, so they change their phone every week, and they probably use 3 or 4 mobile phones anyway. So it's very difficult to keep up with them. Every time they switch it on, they think that somebody like me is listening in to their conversation. So they try and encode their conversations with their baddies, their friends, their villainous compadres. So they don't say, hi Colin Jones, it's Bob Smith here. I've got that 25 kilos of cocaine we were talking about yesterday in the Black Dog. And yes, we agreed £25,000 a kilo. Well, I'll see you at the McDonald's car park tomorrow night. I'll be in the black Range Rover. Make sure you bring your white van, registration number. Of course, they don't say that because they think that if they substitute certain words for other words, then it will throw us completely off the track. So they won't say drugs, they'll say gear. They won't say, I'll see you in Amsterdam, they'll say, I'll see you in the flat place. Which could be confused for Norfolk. I mean, they could end up not meeting, but they do say we only catch the stupid ones. I had one guy on the phone saying, how many T-shirts have you got for me today? And his friend said, I've got 18 and a half T-shirts. So I'm on the end of the headphones in the rubber room in London, thinking, he's definitely not talking about T-shirts, he's talking about cocaine. They won't say, have you got my £25,000? They'll say, have you got those bits of paper? How many bits of paper? 25. Okay. I'll see you in the hot place. Not Scunthorpe, Spain. I'll see you in the faraway place. Not Edinburgh, South America. So they're paranoid. The second thing they are, common to all villains, is they are greedy. They don't want to do a day's work. They want to get as much money as possible for as little effort, as little risk, and they certainly don't want to pay taxes. So they're greedy. But greed is something that will get you in the end. Everybody knows that. If you are greedy, it's karma. Somebody will catch up to you. If you start doing things that you are not experienced at because of greed, it will trip you up. I still have a very good friend, Cockney intelligence officer, lives, breathes London, never been outside East Ham, I don't think. And he gave me an intelligence report. And it was about Hell's Angels drug dealing to all and sundry. And it was headed up West Country drug dealers. And these Hell's Angels were based in Reading, which just shows how far west he ever got. I don't think he'd ever been past the Houses of Parliament. But anyway, they really should have stuck to what they knew. The Hells Angels are a very difficult organisation to infiltrate. Tall, dark, handsome customs officers can't just turn up on their doorstep and say, look, would you mind awfully if we joined your organisation? I've listened to Led Zeppelin, I've got a moped. Very difficult. They're a very rank-conscious organisation, very structured, can't just get in. Now, this intelligence report was that they were moving up in the world. They were very successful. Based in Reading, they would get their cocaine from Kennington, Elephant and Castle, big Colombian community down there, bring the gear back to Reading and dish it out to biker gangs and anybody else who could afford it. But some bright spark had told them that if they could get a yacht to the Canaries, they had a contact in the Canaries that could give them their kilos of cocaine, not for £25,000 a kilo off the Colombians, but for less than £5,000. All they had to do, get a yacht, get to the Canaries. So of course we're very interested in this information, but difficult to follow them around. They're all on Harley Davidsons. But eventually we tracked them. We tracked them down to a boatyard in Southampton where they purchased a yacht. £100,000 cash. Excellent. Needed a bit of doing up, but they've done it. They've done the business. They've shelled out their £100,000. They are on a mission to get this cocaine, a large amount of cocaine, from the Canaries. So we have a customs cutter just over the horizon, and they toddle off around the south coast. My surveillance team is off down the 303, taking pictures of Stonehenge and all this sort of thing, listening to the radio commentary and the general direction of the boat, and it ends up in Dartmouth. Everybody knows Dartmouth? Everybody says yes at this point, because everybody that's been to Dartmouth, beautiful inner harbour. You can tie your boat up 5 minutes from the town centre on the quay, beautiful, on the River Dart. The surveillance team come into Dartmouth and drive down the quayside to see the Hells Angels. They've moored the boat up, and they've been met by a few of their mates from Reading, Harley Davidsons, lots of handshakes and slapping each other on the back for a job well done. Got the boat, into a position where they can refit it and do it up before going across the sea. My navigator in the car with me says he's a customs cutter commander in his spare time as well. He said, well, we should come back about 1 o'clock in the morning. Wouldn't tell me why. Wry smile. So we off to the hotel. Out for the evening, glass of lemonade, salad sandwich. Charlie and I at 1 o'clock in the morning, the appointed hour, wander up the quayside doing the best impression of sober, tall, dark, handsome customs officers, to find the same Hells Angels fighting on the quayside. Punches. If they're in a comic, there'd be a big bubble, you know, kapow. They had forgotten that the tide goes out as well as in at Dartmouth, and the guide rope, or whatever you call it, I'm not a nautical man, the guide rope had pulled 3 of their Harley-Davidsons into the mud, and the yacht is now at a jaunty out, a 45-degree angle, with them all a pitched battle in the street. So they think, well, discretion being the better part of valour, we haven't managed to get it from Southampton to Dartmouth without incident. What are the chances of getting it to the Canaries? Anybody from Devon or Cornwall? Definitely. There's one lady up there. The Devon or Cornwall?
Connections with both.
Excellent. Well, they're all smugglers in Devon and Cornwall. If there was a lot of people from Devon and Cornwall, I'd obviously they're law-abiding to the... but, you know, the people of Devon and Cornwall have been trying to smuggle things past the authorities since the Romans were here. You know, Greek amphora of wine past the old men in skirts. Remember Poldark? I mean, Angharad Rees had a very great impression on me when I was 10. The hair and the accent and the bodice. Robin Ellis, you know, the red coats. And it was all about the locals trying to smuggle everything past the authorities. Well, the Hells Angels decided that, well, as we're in Devon and Cornwall, we'll get a dodgy yacht skipper and we'll pay him to take the boat across for us. Couldn't be easier. They spent about a month looking for dodgy yacht skipper. It took them ages. I think it probably took them about 20 minutes, but it took them a month to negotiate the price. Unfortunately, the dodgy yacht skipper they picked was an undercover customs officer. And not surprisingly, the crew that he picked were undercover customs officers. They did send one Led Zeppelin fan with them. You know, they're all in musto, wet weather gear, yellow wellies, deck shoes, jaunty hat, I mean properly kitted out. This guy, leather jacket, leather trousers, leather boots, a big chain around, you know, definitely not waterproof or water resistant. I can just imagine dinner in the galley, good looking customs officers, AC/DC fan. I mean, normally you just have an accident and fall overboard. No paperwork. He was there, honest, Your Honour. He was there 1 minute, and we looked around, and 3 days later he was gone. So, but we needed him because he had the contact in the Canaries. So they pick up the gear, no problem. Back across the Bay of Biscay, all uphill. It took them a while to get here, but they landed in B Sands. Slapton Sands, around the area where the Americans practiced for D-Day. They were most surprised, well, one of the crew was most surprised to be met by 30 heavily armed Royal Marines. And people like me with big signs on the beach, don't forget your toothbrush, it's porridge tomorrow, not champagne. And they very happily spent the next 12 to 18 years in prison. So greed will get you in the end. So what sort of methods did, apart from following West Country drug dealers, what sort of methods did my colleagues and I use to trap these guys? Well, it's all about intelligence. None of these things are about somebody walking around the corner and saying, do you remember the Millennium Dome heist, where they crashed JCB through the front door of the Millennium Dome trying to steal the Millennium Diamond? Did anybody actually go and see the diamond? That's pretty good because it cost 13 quid to get in, and it wasn't real. It's an intelligence-led operation. This operation started not because a policeman in a pointy hat walked around the corner and said, I wonder what they're doing at 4 o'clock in the morning with that JCB. It's all about long-term undercover operations. All the big seizures that you see on the TV, it's all about long-term intelligence gathering. And it doesn't matter whether you are in Elizabethan times or whether you are fighting the Cold War in the 1950s, or whether you're trying to stop drug dealers in 2014. The methods of gathering intelligence haven't changed. You have the interception of communications. So Walsingham would have intercepted a letter, all sealed up, broken the seal, read the contents, resealed it as though it had never been touched, and let it go on its way, and used and acted on that information, probably by going to arrest all the wrong people and chopping their heads off. In 2014, the interception of communications is hacking into emails, listening to phone calls, hacking into social media accounts to gather intelligence so that you can use that information to plan your next step and catch them at the end of the job with their hands on the gear. That's the first way. The second way is you can follow people around. So Walsingham on a horse with a cape, following some poor footpad up the A1. In 2014, a full mobile surveillance team with bikes, cars, pretend taxis, vans, following the person from the minute he leaves his house to the McDonald's car park, where he meets his friend. So you can follow them around. Or you can use undercover officers or informants. They're treated in the same way in law enforcement, to infiltrate the organisation and bring back the intelligence that you need. So we've talked about the Hells Angels and the Coke. We had a similar situation with anybody from Swansea? Feckless. My mother's from Wales, but she's from the nice part. Swansea, there are some very nice parts of Swansea, but we had intelligence, one piece of paper from a policeman in Swansea that said this guy's a heroin dealer, and he's because he's not a user, he's putting all his profits into planning a big importation. He's not just going to continue going to Cardiff and Bristol to get his reasonably small amounts of drugs and bringing them back to the valleys and selling them. He is planning a big shipment. Now, that piece of paper, the first piece of intelligence, we're obviously interested in building that up. But you can't just say, on the basis of that, right, we'll go and tap his phone, because that's very intrusive. To tap somebody's phone is to listen to their whole life. And it's very expensive, and it's a really sharp tool in the toolbox of catching villains. And the Home Secretary is not going to wear it. If you just say, some policeman in Swansea thinks he's a heroin smuggler, can we tap his phone? The answer will be no. There's no point even asking, won't get past your line manager. Equally, you can't say, we're going to spend £8,000 a day with a full surveillance team following him around every single day from the minute he gets up to the minute he goes to sleep to prove that he's a heroin smuggler. They'll never wear it. It's just too expensive. But you do want to build this piece of paper into some sort of, even if you disprove it, because the policeman might be wrong. It might be information from a competitor who's trying to dob him in. You do need to bottom it out. So you have to go with the cheapest possible route. And that is by getting an informant. Informants are normally part of the criminal community. They have two things. They have to have two things. They have to have the motivation to speak to you, and they have to have access to the information that you want. So the people who live in his street, terraced street, the couple who live opposite see that there's something dodgy going on in this house. They're law-abiding citizens. They have the motivation to tell us registration numbers, descriptions of people coming in and out at all hours. But they have the motivation to tell us, but they don't really have the access to the information that we want. His brother, on the other hand, co-conspirator, loves his brother, knows absolutely everything about his plans to smuggle a large amount of heroin into the country. So he has the access, but he doesn't have the motivation. He hates us. If we approached him, he'd laugh and then go and tell his brother. So we're looking for somebody who has the two things that we want. And it can take months, but we profile absolutely everybody that he knows. People he plays rugby with, people he drinks with, other villains in the community, family, friends, everybody. And it can take months to find that right person. To cut a long story short, we happen upon his live-in girlfriend, who he has a small baby with. And the intelligence is, surprise, surprise, that he's not the best father and partner that a girl could wish for. He's a heroin dealer. But the most important thing was that she wasn't from the valleys. She was from another part of the country. So she doesn't have her mother and father living in the next street. Because like lots of communities, everybody knows everybody else. It would be pointless trying to approach her if the families knew each other. But the intelligence was that he beat her up and that she might be looking to get out of the relationship. But of course, she's got no money, she's got nowhere to go, he doesn't give her very much, she's on benefits. She hasn't really got anywhere to escape to. So on a Tuesday afternoon when she's doing the big shop, Morrison's, obviously if she lived in Shrewsbury, they'd be shopping in Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's. She's pushing the baby in the trolley around the fish aisle and she bumps into somebody. There's no conversation, it's just an apology. Sorry, I bumped into you. Off she goes. When the same thing happened the next week, same shop, same aisle, it was, we bumped into each other last week? Yes, we did. Within a couple of weeks, they've become friends. They're having coffee after the big shop. Terrible coffee in Morrison's, but no account of a taste. And it's over the next couple of months, the relationship is built between our undercover officer and the target's girlfriend, and it's clear that she does want to leave the relationship, can't see her way out, doesn't like all the dealing. She's definitely got in with a bad lad. So she's got the access and the motivation to help us. So now we play our cards. It's called the pitch. We have to tell her that this friend you've had for the last 2 or 3 months is not really your friend. She works for a large and powerful organisation. We want you to give all the information you can on your boyfriend, and then we'll help you get out of the relationship, and there'll be reward money and maybe witness protection if it goes well. I've been in many of those situations where the person has thrown the table at me, thrown a punch, run off, and told the target they're trying to tap me up. Months and months of work down the drain, you have to start again, and the target knows then that people are looking at him. But on this occasion, she said yes. It's a big emotional thing, a hurdle to get over, to physically accept the fact that you're going to be betraying somebody that you live with. And it's only then that you realise how creaky your floorboards are. When she gets up in the middle of the night, creeps around the bed, make sure she doesn't trip over the cat, wake the baby, take his mobile phone off the side table, creep downstairs, don't trip over the dog, turn the phone on and hope that all the messages he's got coming through don't come through on loud and wake him up. But she's there to interrogate his phone, give us all the numbers that he's ringing and all the numbers that are ringing him, and the contents of the phone book. And when he's in the lounge on the phone making plans, and she's in the kitchen feeding the baby, she's got to keep an ear out for, is he going to the flat place? Is he going to Birmingham to meet some Turkish lorry driver or middleman? Is he going to the phone box down the road when he's got a perfectly good mobile phone? It's a bit of a clue. If you've got a mobile phone and it works, but you go to a phone box and phone a phone box in Ankara, there is a bit of a clue there. And this doesn't cost us very much money. She is basically gathering our intelligence. But it's building the picture up so that we can go in front of our line managers, our senior managers, and say, yes, he's been phoning this known phone box in Ankara, and our Turkish friends have seen a person using that phone box, and he's one of their targets. He's a middleman for the Afghani heroin. So now we're building the picture. We can say, yes, we do want to use surveillance at £8,000 a day. But of course we don't, like in the olden days where we just turn up and do days and days and days of surveillance to try and bottom out what was going on, usually in the summer, usually in Cornwall. We can now target our surveillance. So when she rings her handler and says, he's flying to the flat place tomorrow, not sure where from, but he's getting up early, we haven't had to spend a week on surveillance. We can send the guys down the evening before, lemonade, salad sandwiches, get up early, follow him to Heathrow. If he stops at a phone box at Reading Services, makes a phone call, we can wait for him to go and send somebody in and find out who he was ringing or who was ringing him. When he gets to Heathrow and checks his suitcase in, you know, when you go to Heathrow and you see the suitcase go off down the carousel, you imagine it being picked up by fairies and placed on cushions and trundled out very nicely on pink fluffy clouds to the plane and placed nicely in rows and columns. It's not really like that. Big hairy baggage handlers, as soon as it goes out of sight, throw it in the general direction of the plane, and then a big JCB scoops it up and throws it into the hold. So always use hard-sided suitcases. When he checks them in, obviously our tall, good-looking customs officers are going to break into his case, and they're very good at doing that. They don't need these TSA locks that the Americans have. They can just get into them. Don't know how they do it. It's a dark art. They're looking for hotel reservations, car hire documents, new Dutch mobile phone chips that he's going to use as soon as he gets abroad. And we can phone the Dutch and say, we've got a target, he's on the plane, he's going to be at Schiphol in 2 hours. Would you mind taking him from the airport to wherever he's going? Because we need to identify who he's meeting, where he's meeting, need photos. And of course it's the Dutch, they love the British, and they'll do that at the drop of a hat. Excellent. I also love the Spanish. But if you ring them, the guy will have flown to Barcelona, had his meeting, had a 2-week holiday, flown back, been arrested, spent 3 years in prison, and then the Spanish will ring up and say, when did you want that surveillance team again? So not much point if he's going to Spain. More helpfully, if they go to Spain, we just get on the plane with them and spend the summer in Barcelona. So he gets followed to Holland, and the Dutch identify him. And we've got everything now. The only thing we don't have is the registration number of the truck, where it's concealed, and when it's coming in, what route it's going to come into the UK. And for that, we need phone taps. But we've done all this surveillance. We've identified everybody in the organisation. So we can go in front of the Home Secretary now and say, we need his phone switched on. Now, the Home Secretary only signs about 1,500 warrants a year. And that's for everything. Villains, armed robbers, drug smugglers, paedophile gangs, terrorists, the whole lot. It's about 1,500. When they're using 6 or 7 or 20 phones a year, that's not very many people being targeted. But now we've got it. We've got one mobile phone. Every time he picks it up, we're going to be listening, or I spent 3 years in London doing that, but on this occasion, it was somebody else that I wasn't on that team. So they listen to every single phone call. Every time he makes a phone call to somebody involved in the conspiracy, or somebody where he starts talking about pieces of paper or flat places or I'll see you in the office. You know that the phone boxes, the villains call them offices, because when the phone boxes were invented by BT, the nice red ones, obviously not the ones that look like shower cubicles, they were called public call offices. So the villains, the old Cockney rhyming slang, wasn't exactly rhyming slang, but they used the word office, and they still do. So when they say, I'll see you in the office, he hasn't got somewhere with glass walls and a nice view of the river. It is a phone box. So now we are listening to all his phone calls. Every time he makes a dirty phone call, we tap that phone. So we start off with 1, the next day we'll have 2, the next day we'll have 4. Within a couple of months you can have 60 mobile phones. And when he uses 1 or 2 mobile phones an hour for a couple of minutes, you can see how very quickly the amount of calls that you have to listen to rack up. But we're not interested in all his other activities. For instance, we're not interested in his dealing. It would help the police, but we would just get bogged down. We just want to know who the lorry driver is, so we can tap his phone. And is he going to give us a clue about what the truck looks like? And in this case, he did. So when the truck came through Dover-Calais with 100 kilos of heroin, they paid a local guy, to take a kilo of heroin from Calais to Dover in his VW Polo. And he went on the same ship as the truck and got off the ship before the truck, and they put a call into customs and said there's a green VW Polo with a kilo of heroin in the back, and they stopped it, and he was dobbed in. The truck sails nicely through because all the customs officers are looking at the Polo. Fortunately, we knew what was happening, so we had the Polo stopped, and the truck was just allowed to go through anyway. But this is a sort of methodology they use. Dob somebody in, takes the attention away from our truckload of heroin, and it drives up to London. Now our guy was in bed in Swansea. He was directing everything by mobile phone. When everybody was arrested at Ferry Lane Industrial Estate on the A13, he was nowhere to be seen. He hadn't had anything to do with he hadn't touched the gear, he hadn't touched the money. He got somebody else to do everything. But he still got 20 years, because when you look at the phone billing of everybody involved, he's the only one who spoke to the driver. And when the driver arrived in Dover, the driver phoned him. Now, there was a conversation between the driver and the main man, which clearly implicated him in the conspiracy. But you can't use material from phone taps in evidence. So even if he had said, yes, I'm glad you've got my 100 kilos of heroin, take it to the Ferry Lane Industrial Estate, because there's a guy with 2 transit vans, one from Liverpool called Joe and one from Newcastle called Benny. Please load it up and take all the money off them and bring them back to me at 15 Acacia Avenue. Even if he'd said all that, none of it is admissible in evidence. In fact, you're not even allowed to tell the trial judge that there is a phone tap in place. So the conviction is based entirely on circumstantial evidence. And you'll hear this a lot. People say, oh, he must be innocent. It's only circumstantial. Circumstantial is the thing that gets people convicted. Because when you look at the phone calls, he is the only possible one. He is the centre of the spider's web. So he gets 20 years. We all go to the pub and have Guinness and slap ourselves on the back, shake our hands. Our boss goes on the TV and says, what a fantastic job we've done, and it's very dangerous. Thank God we've got these people. But we're part of the biggest gang in the world. The person who needs all the credit is the girl. Because if she wasn't part of any gang, if he'd found out, she'd be dead. I mean, not threats over the phone, or threats in court. I'm going to kill you, copper. This proper dead. So she's now in the witness protection program. New house, new identity, new job. But she's the one who put her life on the line for that. So when you see these massive operations with chief constables telling you how brilliant their policemen are, and they are, remember who started it off, the person who's never named, who is thinking about this guy in prison. He will be going through everything he can imagine to try and work out how he got tripped up, because he was back in Swansea, he wasn't anywhere near the gear. So that's how we catch them. We've mentioned cocaine with the Hells Angels and heroin. Heroin's not actually that big in the UK. I mean, there's enough of it about. It's always in the news. But the thing that makes money, the most profitable drug, is cocaine. Grown on the western slopes of the Andes, Ecuador, Bolivia, Peru, by poor farmers. Poor farmers who are paid $8 a hectare to grow bananas, $80 a hectare to grow coffee, $800 a hectare to grow coca leaf, and the Colombian middlemen won't torture their families, rape their daughters, kidnap their children. So I don't blame the farmers at all for growing coca leaf at the end of a gun. Also, it's legal. Coca leaf is legal. They make it into tea called mate. I was going to say it's nice. It's a bit like twinning the silver tip, very expensive, and not like a proper proper mug of builder's tea. But the Indians have been using it for 1,000 years to alleviate the symptoms of altitude sickness. When the Spanish turned up, it took them about 70 years for a Spanish woman to have a healthy baby at altitude, because they didn't realise that all the healthy babies running around that were Indian were because the women had been chewing coca leaves for years. It makes your mouth slightly numb, but it does stop you throwing up and feeling. I mean, you know when you've got the worst possible flu? At 4,000 metres, if you've got altitude sickness, you feel like death. I mean, it is. You've got to get down, you know. But if you have tea and chew coca leaf, the symptoms go away. In an hour, you're feeling fine. So it's legal. It is bought or forced purchase from the farmers by the Colombian and the Venezuelan middlemen and taken to underground labs in the jungle and turned into cocaine hydrochloride, and then smuggled mostly through the Caribbean into Miami and the States, or through across the Mexican border. But obviously a lot of it comes to Europe. And there are 1,000 ways that it can be smuggled. Some of it not for polite company. So we'll talk about that now. You can understand why they're called stuffers and swallowers. I'll leave it there. One of the ways is through suspension in alcohol. So you buy a couple of bottles of Mount Gay spiced rum, favourite of customs officers, and you drill a hole in the bottom of the bottle, drain the contents out into a saucepan and simmer, gas mark 2, 20 minutes. When I cook and add things to liquid and let it cool, it usually ends up as some sort of horrendous sludge in the bottom of the pan, and my wife says, we'll just go out. But if you add cocaine to simmering, you don't let it boil because you don't want to boil the alcohol off. Add your cocaine hydrochloride to the saucepan, mix it in. When it melts basically into the liquid, when it cools, because of the chemical makeup of alcohol and cocaine, it just stays suspended in the alcohol. So when you syringe it back into the bottom of the bottle, use a wax plug to seal it. Obviously you don't want to crack the top, because even the thickest customs officer will notice that it's been tampered with. So put it on the table. It looks like, so you have 2 bottles of 2 litres will hold a kilo of coke. It looks perfect. It will pass first inspection. Obviously the minute you turn it upside down, you can see there's something going on, but it will pass first inspection. not unlike mangoes or any other fruit, where you can use a razor blade to take the skin off, take the flesh out, pack it with cocaine, glue the peel back on. On the table, it looks, passes first inspection. Don't drop it on your foot, it will break your toes. So we now have this situation where a girl and her boyfriend are in Manchester, and they've been paid to go to Kingston for 2 weeks. 2-week holiday, but they knew that they had to pick up these 2 bottles of rum, and they knew that there was coke inside, but we were interested in who they were giving the coke to when they were back in the UK. So they go off for their holiday, come back on the red eye, bit of shopping in London, back to her flat in the evening. We're all plotted up around the area. We want to see who's going to turn up and either collect the bottles, or is she going to take them to somebody else. They go in the flat, 11 o'clock at night. She shares a flat with a boyfriend who went with her, so he knew all about it, but also a brother who knew nothing about it apart from the fact they'd been on holiday. He comes back from nightclub, 1 o'clock in the morning. They're in bed, into the kitchen, 2 bottles of rum. My fantastic sister's been abroad, that's obviously a present for me. They found him stone dead in the lounge the next morning. First we knew about it was when the mother and the ambulance turned up. So she got 8 years. You send people to prison as a punishment for the crime that they've done and as a deterrent to other people. She probably didn't need to go to prison, she'd killed her brother. So if you are going to smuggle coke from the Caribbean, make sure you tell the other people in the house. Husband, kids. So that's how they get it, one of the ways that they get it into the country. We've mentioned that it's the most profitable villainous activity, apart from stealing the Millennium Diamond, but I'm not sure how they were going to ever pass that on. £25,000 if you buy it for a kilo off the Colombians in Elephant and Castle. £5,000 if you get to Canaries. The Dutch will deliver it to your door for £15,000 a kilo. I think the guy's name is Hertz van Rentel. And if you've got a contact in Colombia, you can get it for $500 a kilo. You've got to spend some money getting it back. But if you think that you're going to turn 1,000 grams, cut it into 2,000 grams and sell it for £40 a gram, that is a lot of profit. Gone are the days of the 70s with my hero Jack Regan and the Sweeney, where you could turn up at Heathrow with £100,000 in your bag and they'd say, where are you taking that 100,000? You'd say, I'm going to buy a bar in Spain. Nobody's ever gone to Spain to buy a bar. We knew what it was all about, but there was no money laundering legislation. Now, we just take the money off them. So, is this £100,000 yours? Yes. Where did you get it? I can't remember. Well, we'll have it off you. When you've remembered where you got it, you can come back in 3 days, go in front of a magistrate, and if you can persuade them that it's legitimate, you can have your money back. 99% of the time, they don't turn up. Sometimes they do, and the magistrate will say, and where did you get this money? I won it gambling, Your Honour. Really, what horse did you win it on? I can't remember. You say a casino, yes. What was the name of the casino? I can't remember. Well, you're not having your money back. So now they have to either smuggle it out the same sort of way that they smuggle the drugs in, not suspended in alcohol, but they'll give it to a lorry driver, €1 million in a holdall. Please take this to Uncle Pedro in Madrid, and then it can get to South America. Well, I'm convinced that if somebody gave me €1 million and £500, I wouldn't go to Uncle Pedro or Madrid. I'd be on the first flight to somewhere else. But I suppose they think they might have kneecaps altered if they did that. So they can either smuggle it Anybody heard of Hawala banking? It's a very intelligent audience because most people say no. 1,000-year-old system of financial transfer based entirely on trust. In the days when usury was illegal, you could move money around the country or countries for a flat commission. And it's alive and well in the UK. In fact, it's alive and well all over the world. Predominantly with immigrant labour. So you have a young man working as a chef in a restaurant, wants to send his money, his wages back to his family in, let's say, Colombo. He will take his money to a Hawala banker. And this guy is just a guy with a phone, a calculator and a safe, notebook. There was a guy up in West Yorkshire in Bingley transferred more money out of the UK in a year than Barclays did in Yorkshire. The whole of Barclays, 30 million he moved. And he basically turned up with your money, £500. Please send this to my mum in Colombo. He'll take a flat commission. He will give you a password, and then he'll ring his opposite number in Colombo. There'll be 50 Hawala bankers in Birmingham probably, and he'll ring somebody that he knows in Colombo and say, Mrs. Singh is going to turn up with a password. Please release local currency to the value of £480, and that's it. The money doesn't transfer, doesn't leave his safe. The FSA hate it, of course, because it's completely undercover, unregulated. But it is a system designed entirely on trust. The minute that anybody reneges on a deal, nobody would ever use the system again. The money in his safe goes to people who are moving money into the country. Now, of course, the villains have latched onto this because there are some unscrupulous Hawala bankers who are quite prepared to take £50,000, £100,000 or more for no questions asked. But the same system applies. The whole of Dubai is built on laundered money, and it's a lot of it Hawala banked in cash from the UK, America, wherever, straight to where it's needed. You'll be pleased to know that we're nearly at the end. I'll just say two things. How many people smoke? Nobody admits to it. Nobody ever admits to it. Who used to smoke? If I'd asked that question in 1920, everybody would have put their hand up. On the other hand, they'd have had a cigarette going. The point is that we have seen generations of people leave us because of smoking. Every generation gets a bit cleverer. And that will be the same with drugs. Using Class A drugs doesn't make you a bad person, it just makes you different to everybody else. In 50 years' time, we'll be all on, or anybody who wants to use it will be on synthetic drugs that are at least quality tested to some degree. At the moment, it's completely in the hands of the criminals in terms of the source and the supply from South America or Pakistan. In the future, every generation will get cleverer and they will gravitate towards safer drugs. The second thing I'd like to say is legalise the whole lot. 40,000 people dead in Mexico would suggest that it's not working. It's never worked. Prohibition has never worked in any form. It won't solve all the problems. It will create some new ones, but it will take a lot of it out of the serious villains' hands. The people who are making billions of pounds. I'm not talking about your dealer on the street who's making a few quid to keep himself going. The profits go to people who never pay tax, who are richer than creases. So legalise it to put their business out of commission. Thank you very much. And I'm such a terrible salesman, because I would have mentioned this before, and have a huge stack of books with a life-size cardboard cutout. I wrote a book, very short story. I wrote a book in 2010, changed all the names to protect the innocent, published by Penguin, £5 on Amazon, but you can get it off me today for £8, and I'll say something really in the front. and it's being turned into a BBC One crime drama series. Filming started earlier this month, filming until August. It'll be out, I think, all the publicity says August, but I know it'll be January. Filmed by the guy who does Musketeers. Trevor Reeves, the main baddie. Lots of really good stage actors. Joe Joyner from EastEnders looks absolutely beautiful as my wife. So there's a big difference there, obviously. And she's really nice as well, Julie. We've had to change it so much that my ex-wife doesn't say, that's supposed to be me, I'm now suing you. But, so that's the sales pitch. I'll have a book. There's one book, you can fight amongst yourselves about it. And so thank you very much. So questions, if you...
questions for Cameron, please. Before he starts, I don't know why he denigrated my hometown when he started. So I come from Reading. We have no criminals in Reading. We never have. Questions?
Can I just ask you then the title of your book and the title of the TV thing?
Well, I'm such a terrible salesman. It is called The Interceptor. They did say they were going to change the name of the TV show, but they haven't yet, and all the publicity that's come out says Interceptor, so I'm hoping that they keep it the same, because that'll make... at the moment, I'm the biggest buyer of all my books. and Penguin charged me £4 a copy. So, you know. So, yes, it's called The Interceptor, and it's in all good bookshops.
Do you intercept at all, or has that gone?
So, intercept?
Letters.
We used to, yes. I mean, before mobile phones, letters were, working with the post office was the biggest part of the Interceptor's job. But then, of course, mobile phones, email came on the scene, and if I was a villain now, I'd send everything by post, because nobody looks at letters. In fact, there was a very famous politician, I think it might have been Henry Kissinger, said, if I want to send another person in another country a communication, if I send an email, I know it's going to be intercepted. So he always wrote letters.
All the articles that are written now are telling us that drug taking in the UK is totally spiral out of control. Do you ever see a time when we've cleaned up the act, so to speak, that drug taking is going to be, not acceptable?
I think that the biggest problem with drug taking in this country is alcohol. I know it sounds kind of trite, but the NHS is on its knees because of people getting ill and fighting through alcohol, and the use of drugs is it does have effects on people. But how many people here have been directly affected by somebody on drugs, either because they've been burgled or because they've had some sort of confrontation? I suspect it's quite a low number, but I bet a lot more people have been in a room with somebody who's kicked off because they're drunk and caused the police more trouble, the NHS more trouble. So I don't think, spiralling out of control, it's out of control because there are never enough people to deal with it, either nurses, policemen, doctors, custody sergeants. So in that way, it is out of control because if you want to smuggle drugs or use drugs, the chances of getting caught are tiny. So in that terms, it is out of control. But what actual effect it has on people other than the user, and if they have an overdose, obviously the family. But people, I just can't get my head around a 17-year-old kid smoking dope and lying in his bedroom is not as bad as him going out and drinking 8 pints of Stella and punching his girlfriend. I just can't see that. Much worse.
Anybody else? No?
How can a politician justify we have to say to the community we're going to ban drugs?
Make them legal.
But I realise that.
Sorry, I mean, you know what politicians are like. They'll never say anything that they think will lose them votes.
That's what I'm saying.
And that is the impossible Rubicon that can't be crossed, because to sort the problem out or to start to address the issue, you have to legalise it or decriminalise it in some way. Politicians want to keep their jobs, and I can see it in a few generations' time when every generation gets brighter, and at some point 20-year-olds will put pressure on the government and say, we're not voting for you unless you do it. But at the moment there's absolutely no chance. But Portugal decriminalised it, sorted out quite a lot of problems. But it's in the source countries that pressure needs to be put. So it is a battle, but it's not even a battle that can be fought. It's just a battle that goes on and you watch from the outside.
No? I'd like to call on Terry Pearson to give the vote of thanks.
Well, Cameron, you've given us a fascinating insight into your work and whetted our appetite for the TV series. On behalf of everyone here, may I thank you for an interesting and informative talk.